Good evening, everyone. This week's Parsha is Parsha's Chayei, Sara, and we will be focusing on, let's see here, page 110 in the art scroll. And just some background now to what's happening at this point of the Parsha. When we read this coming Shabbos, Parsha's Chayei, Sara, we will read about how Avraham, our forefather Abraham, sent his servant Eliezer, his trusted servant, to find a wife for his son Yitzchak, for his son Isaac. And the directions that Avraham gave Eliezer was not to take a local girl from the Canaanites, but rather to go back to his birthplace, which was a city called Aram Naharayim, and to find a wife for Yitzchak from his family. There were still family members there, and Eliezer was told to go there and to find a wife for Yitzchak from his from Avram's family members. Okay, so on page 110, Torah tells us that Eliezer, journeyed out there and found himself at a well. Now let's pay at again page 110. This is Parak Chav Daled chapter Pasuk Yud Aleph, verse 11. And he sat the camels outside the city by a well, which was really a spring. Le'es erev, in the evening time. Le'es tzeis hashavos, at the time when the water drawers would come out. Shavos is a female form, so it was typically understood that it was going to be from the young girls, from the maidens that were going to come out and draw water, and at this point of time of the day. And this was the time where Eliezer found himself by this well, by this spring. Vayomar, Eliezer said, Hashem Elokei Adonai Avraham. Hashem, that's the name of Hashem, the God of my master Avraham. Hakrei nolafanei hayom. Make it happen before me today. Va'asei chesed Adonai Avraham, and do kindness with my master Avraham. And behold, I will be standing by the water, right by the spring of water. And the daughters of the people of the city will be going out to draw water. And it shall be that the young girl, that I will say to her, tip over your jug, and I will drink. And she will say, drink. And I will also give your camels to drink. That's the one that you have chosen for your servant Yitzchak. And through this I will know that you did kindness with my master. So Eliezer, he was given instructions, find a wife. Wasn't really given how to do that. So Eliezer decided to work with a sign. He prayed to God, and he made this sign with God to be able to figure out who is the girl that is meant for Yitzchak. And what was the sign that he made? The sign that he made, and there's an interesting discussion about whether it was appropriate for him to make this sign or not, but this was the sign that he made. And he understood that because of the special relationship that God had with Avraham, that a sign like this would be able to work for what they needed. And the sign was that when these maidens come to go ahead and draw the water, he's going to approach one. He's going to say to her, basically, give me to drink. And her response is going to be, drink, and I'll also give your camels to drink. So just looking at it on the surface, the sign is, I'm going to ask her for a drink. And her response is going to be, to me, give that I can have a drink and my camels will drink. That's basically what it sounds like. That's the sign. Okay, now, so what happens next? What happens next is, and this is continuing now on page 112, Pasuk Tesva, verse 15. Vayihu terem kila daber, and it was he had just finished speaking. V'nei Rivka yotzeis, behold, Rivka came out. Asher yolda leBesuel ben Milka, Eshes Nachar Achi Avraham, who was born to Besuel, the son of Milka, the wife of Dachar, Avraham's brother. V'chada al shechma, with a pitcher on her shoulder. V'anara tabas mareh me'od, I'm sorry. And the young maiden was very beautiful. Besula, a virgin, vishli da'ad, not known by any man. V'tebed ha'aina, she went down to the spring. You have to go down. V'tmalei chada v'tal, she filled her jug, and she came up. Okay, so she went to do her job. She went down to fill with water. She filled with water, and she came up. Vayaretz ha'eved lakrasa. The servant then ran to greet her. Vayomer, and he said, give me now a little bit of water to drink from your pitcher. Vatomer shesei adoni, she said, drink, my master. Vatmeher, and she hurried. Vatered kada al yada, she lowered her jug onto her hand. Vatashkeu, and she gave him to drink. Vatachal lahashkoso, she finished giving him to drink. Vatomer, and she said, Gam ligmalecha eshav, I will also draw for your camels, adim kilishtais, until they finish drinking. Vatamaher, she hurried. Vatahar kada ala shokes, she emptied out her pitcher into the trough. Vataretz oid ala be'er l'sh'oiv, and she ran again to the well to draw. Vatish'av l'chol gamalav, and she drew for all his camels. Okay, so, and the ish mishtaila, and the man was in wonderment over, watching, macharish, silently watching, ladas ha'etzliach Hashem da'ko im lav, to see if Hashem had brought success or not. And then the verses continue that after she finishes giving the camels to drink, he asks her who she is. She lets her know who she is and who her father is. And Eliezer realizes that he found the right one. He made the sign, she fulfilled the sign, and she was from the family. So it worked out perfect. This is how he found Rivka who would be the wife for Yitzchak. Okay, so now let's go back and let's take things apart here. Let's focus on a couple of things. And, whenever we study the Parsha, when we study Chumash, we always focus on the fact that the words there's no extra words, right? There's not that the words of the Torah are exact. And if we find words that seem to be superfluous, if we find words that don't seem to belong, we focus on them. It's not just random that they're here. Each word has a reason for why it's here. So now, if we go back to Pasuk, okay, we go back to page 112, Pasuk Yud Zayin, verse 17. So, what happened? Eliezer made his sign, and Rivka came. Rivka went down to the spring and drew her water. And then it says, Vayaretz ha'eved lakrasa. So the servant ran to greet her. Why do you have to run for? He couldn't just walk over to her? Here she was. This was the time when the maidens came to draw water. So here was a maiden. She came to draw water, and she drew water. So now Eliezer just has to go over to her and say to her, Can I have something to drink? Why did he run to greet her? Why did he run? And therefore, Rashi, in his commentary here, cites the Midrash that tells us that the reason he ran is because something gave him a very strong hunch right away that she was the one. And he ran because basically he got very excited. There's something going on here. He saw something unique, something special, and that made him not just walk over to her, but run because he already gave the impression that this is the one. Says the Medrash, what was it exactly that Eliezer saw? Eliezer saw that when Rivka went to the well, that Rivka didn't have to draw the water. The water rose up for her. That's what the Medrash says. The water rose up to her. Eliezer sees that there's something unique about this girl. If a miracle like that is happening to the water's rising up to her, there's something going on here. And therefore he ran over to her. Now, okay. So the first question that needs to be asked here is the following. Okay, well, imagine you're Eliezer and you are trying to find the right girl for Yitzchak, you make a sign, right? You made a sign. I'm going to ask her to drink. She's going to give me to drink. And if she also says, I'll give you to drink, give it to the camels, that's the one. Now, Eliezer now sees a girl, and he sees a miracle happen to her. The water comes rising up to her instead of she having to draw it. And because that, Eliezer runs. So if you were Eliezer, wouldn't you already say, forget the sign, this must be the one? Like a girl like that, who now has the water rising to her, wouldn't it be pretty clear that she must be the one? But Eliezer doesn't just rely on that. He makes her go through the whole sign. He asks her for the water, and she responds. Why do you have to bother going through the rest of the signs? Wasn't this miracle enough to say that this must be the one? So the commentaries on the Medrash answer in a very interesting way, and that is, it's a very interesting idea, and that is that in Eliezer's mind, this girl, there must be something unique about her. If the water rises to her, she must be very righteous. There's got to be something about her. But what Eliezer wanted to see about Rivka was more than her righteousness. What Eliezer really wanted to see was her kindness. This test of going ahead and saying, give me to drink, and she's going to respond, not only you, but also your animals, right? That seemingly is a test in kindness. And what Eliezer wants to see here, besides righteousness, of course, he wants her to be righteous, but he wants to see that she's kind. Because Rivka is now, whoever's going to marry Yitzchak is going to be the matriarch of the Jewish people. We're in a time now in Jewish history that the Jewish people are being formed. It starts with Avraham and Sara. It continues with Yitzchak and Rivka. Yitzchak and Rivka were the second of the patriarchs and matriarchs. They are our ancestors, not only because just, biologically we have a line back to them, but rather, just as the commentaries say, just as a parent instills genes into a child, our Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, those personalities in our lives, they instilled in us our spiritual genes. The strength, the abilities, the characteristics that we have uniquely as a Jewish people come from what Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Sara, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, the Avos and the Imais, the matriarchs, the patriarchs, have instilled in us. They instilled in us because they worked on developing these very special traits within them, and they passed it on to us, and it became part of who we are, becomes part of our spiritual makeup. Now, so Eliezer has to see, does Rivka fit? Avraham, we know, was the paradigm of kindness. Avraham's kindness, that was his mission in life. It was through his kindness that he spread belief in God. If Rivka is going to join that family, then Rivka also, if she's going to be the wife of the Yitzchak, she has to fit into that mold. She has to fit into the mold of kindness of Avraham. If Abraham's trait of kindness and everything that lies in that is going to be passed on to the Jewish people through the next generation, Rivka also has to have that same characteristic of loving kindness in her to now pass that down throughout to the Jewish people. And it's not just being kind, it's being kind on the level of Avraham. And as we know from a few weeks ago, after Avraham had his bris milah, the circumcision, and he was sick, and Hashem made it so hot that no one should be out there for him to bring in, to be hospitable to, how Avraham waited outside to find someone to bring into his home. And even after he brought Avraham into his home, after he brought the guests into his home, as sick as he was after his bris milah, after his circumcision, at the age of 99, he went ahead and he took care of the guests himself. He waited on them. He brought them the food himself. That was a level that displays a level of kindness on Avram's part that's way beyond the norm. And Rivka, and Eliezer wanted to see also now, how was Rivka going to perform? Because not just was he looking at Rivka as to would she just fulfill, he asks for water and she says, I'll give you and I'll give the camels. Eliezer wanted to also see how was she going to do all this? And the commentaries point out how measured and how calculated she was. I think we'll see if we'll get to them of that a little bit later. But the point was that Eliezer wanted to see does she fit that mold of kindness that Avraham portrayed, that Avraham lived by. So even if Eliezer sees a miracle happen for her, that's not enough. That's not enough for her to be the wife of Yitzchak. She also has to have that trait of kindness. She has to have that trait and level of kindness like Avraham, that you go way beyond the norm to do in doing kindness. That's what Avraham did, and that's what Eliezer wanted to see on Rivka. So the fact that there was this miracle here, that wasn't enough to go ahead and say, oh, she must be the one, because she could be very righteous. But the question was she kind? And not just was she kind, what did she possess the trait of giving, of being kind, being hospitable, of giving to others that would fit into the household and to the level of kindness that Avraham practiced? Okay, so that's why the miracle wasn't enough. Now, the commentary of Ramban Nachmanides, he cites this midrash, and he points out, very interestingly, how we see in the words this miracle, or how this miracle is alluded to in the words of the Torah. Because if we look again at Pasuk Tes Zayin, verse 16, the second half of the verse, Vaterid ha'ayna, she went down to the spring, Vatamalei kada vato'al, she filled her pitcher, and she came up. Okay, that's what it says. She went down to the spring. Sorry about that. She went down to the spring, and she filled her pitcher, and she came up. That's Pasuk Tes Zayin. That's verse 16. Now, look at verse 20. After she gave Eliezer to drink, now she says, I'm going to give your camels. Vatamaher, she hurried. Vatar kada el hashekes, she emptied out the pitcher to the trough. Vataretz el be'er lishov, she went to the well to draw. Vatishav l'chol gamalav, and she drew for all his camels. Notice how the first time when she goes to the well or to the spring, it doesn't say she drew. It just says she went that she it just says there she filled her pitcher. She went down to the spring and she filled her pitcher. The word, it doesn't say she went down to the well and she drew the water and filled her pitcher. It just says she filled her pitcher. While here it says that she drew from the well. How come there's no mentioning of drawing before? So says Nachmanides, because there was no need to draw. The first time she went to the water came up to her. That's why she didn't have to draw. She just had to fill it up. And that's where the sages saw how something was different the first time than the second time. The first time, there's no mentioning of drawing water. The second time, there is. That means the first time she didn't need to draw the water. Why not? If it's in a spring, you got to bring it up. He calls it a well. That means you got to bring it up. And the answer is because the first time, because she didn't need to bring it up, because it came up to her. That's the point, Nachmanides. That's how Nachmanides shows this comment of Rashi from the Medrash, how it's alluded to in the wording of the Torah. But now we're left with an obvious question. But that would mean that the first time the water came up to her, because it says she didn't have to draw. But the second time she did draw. How come the second time the water didn't come up to her? The first time it came up. The second time it didn't. Why not? If that's the basis, that the water came up, that water came up to her because the first time it doesn't say she drew, and the second time it does, well, that means the second time she had to draw the water. That means the second time the water didn't come up to her. Why not? So the commentary of Kedusha Slavy answers, because now she was doing a mitzvah. Now she was doing a good deed. The first time she went down to get water. She didn't know, but she knows she was going to give it to Eliezer. She just went down to get water. Well, she went down to get water. She had that merit that the water came up to her. But the second time, she's now doing a kindness for Eliezer. She's saying, I'm going to give your animals to drink. That means that now she is doing a mitzvah. She is now doing a mitzvah. She is now doing a kindness. Oh, you're already doing a mitzvah? Then already, Hashem wants to see your actions. The more you're active, the more you're involved, the greater it is. If the water were to come up to her, right, she still would have gone ahead and brought the water to the camels and given them to drink. She would have been involved. But now she's even more involved because she even has to go ahead and draw up the water. And the more that we are involved and active in a mitzvah, the greater it is. If you look at the Torah and you look at what the Torah has us doing, the majority of what we're doing is we're doing. Sure, there are mitzvahs, the commandments that we have, that we fulfill in our minds, but primarily the commandments that we have are all active. And they're not just they're active, and they have very detail, and they have a lot of parts to the activity. It's something that you get, there's a lot to do. The Torah wants us to be active in serving Hashem. And therefore, the more active we are, the better. So when it came now that Rivka was going to be doing a kindness, she was doing a mitzvah now to go ahead and give to Eliezer's camels, at that point, no more miracles. Now, the more you're involved, the more you do, the better it is. And that's because now, so what we have to break this down a little bit more with is an idea that that has repeated itself throughout a number of these parshas. And that is that, when you do a kindness, if doing a kindness for someone is just about, as we say, filling a void for them, they're missing something and I'm meant to fill it. Okay. So you could say that, all right, well, in that case, do I need to be so active? The main point is get that person what they need. So perhaps you could even argue and say that if she doesn't have to draw the water, it'll even be quicker to get to the person what they need. So if a kindness is just about fulfilling someone else's need, then, why is it so important to be active? But the answer is that when we're talking about kindness or we're talking about any mitzvah, yes, when we do a kindness to a person, the goal is to fill a void for them, to take care of their need. But that's not the only point here. The only point is for a person to give, right? There's something about giving. There's a point to giving for the sake of giving. Again, you only give if somebody's missing something. But the goal is not just to fill the other person's need. It's for the giver to be elevated. It's for the giver to become a better person. When we give, we emulate God. So when we give, we are growing. We are elevating ourselves. We are conditioning ourselves. And the truth is, when it comes to any mitzvah, all the activity, when a person does a mitzvah, the fact that they're active in the mitzvah, that molds them, that elevates them. Because really, as people, as human beings, our actions influence who we are. And the more we do, the more we're influenced from our actions. The more good deeds we do, the more the effect of good comes upon us. So therefore, when Rivka's doing this mitzvah now, she's going ahead and being kind. So the more she is involved, the more she's actively involved in what's going on, the more she now is elevated. The more through the kindness itself, she emulates God. And the more the fact that it's a mitzvah and it's a good deed, the more active you are, the more involved you are, the more it's going to have its effect on you. So therefore, there was no miracle the second time around, because the more you're active in the mitzvah, the greater it is. Because the more you are actively involved, the more you'll be elevated, the more it will have the proper effect and influence on you. And what it also tells us is that sometimes when we're doing a kindness or we're doing a mitzvah and it's very involved, there's a lot for us to do, we kind of get a little bit overwhelmed and like almost, wonder, wouldn't it be better if we didn't have to do so much? Wouldn't it be better if it would be easier to do? Well, the answer is, from here we see actually the opposite way. And that is, the more you have to do, the more active you are, the greater the mitzvah is. The fact that Rivka now had to draw the water was because, as Lucius Levi says, it was about having her being more active in the mitzvah. That's what Hashem wants. And therefore, if we are faced with a mitzvah we're given a mitzvah rather, to do, and there's a lot involved, we should really be reminding ourselves that the more we have to do, the more active we are, the more involved we are, we're being like Rivka here, where the more we're actively involved in a mitzvah and in a kindness, the more beloved that is to Hashem, because of the fact that it has a greater effect on us.
How Rivka know something about mitzvah?
She knew it was the right. When I say mitzvah here, she knew that it was the right thing to do. She was the right thing to do. And in general, this part of the Torah that doesn't have what we call commandments, but it has all the lessons that we need to learn for how we should act, in the sense of our character, in the sense of what kind of people we should be. But Rivka understands that there's something about kindness, there's something about giving, and that's why she went so far as she did. So therefore, putting everything together here, Eliezer notices that she must be a very righteous person. If a miracle happens to her, the water comes up to her. But at the same time, that's not enough. He has to see her kindness. And when we observe her kindness, and we see that the first time the water came up to her, and the second time it didn't, that's because the second time that she was now doing an act of kindness and doing a mitzvah, now that she was doing that, no more miracles. Now it's all about your action, your involvement, because of the fact that Hashem wants us to be as much involved and active in serving Him as much as we can. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.